Hey everyone, before we get into the recap of the sermon and the questions, one really quick announcement for your group is that Trunk or Treat is this coming Saturday evening from 5 to 7. Remember, we're not at Belton High School, we're at Lake Belton High School this year. And so I would encourage you guys to come out and invite neighbors, invite friends, family, whoever you'd like. I think we'll have a really great time at Trunk or Treat this coming Saturday evening, all right? So we continued in our series this week, reading Romans backwards, and now we are shifting to the front half of Paul's letter to these Roman house churches. So we've already looked at the back half of the letter to gain some perspective on who he's writing to and see some of the practical implications, and now we're going to look at the front half of the letter. So this week I was in Romans chapter 1. As I mentioned, often the focus when it comes to Romans 1 is the second half of Romans 1, where Paul talks about man's sinfulness and depravity. And so it's pretty bleak, right? It's often a really difficult text, but that's the part of the text that gets the most focus and attention. And often the first half of Romans 1 is just kind of overlooked. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to focus on the first half of Romans 1 because I think it gives us some real insight into Paul as a man, as a person, and kind of what drove him. And so the big ideas this week are that, again, we spent some time just talking about the Apostle Paul. He's one of the most popular figures anywhere in the Bible and in Christian history. He wrote about 2/3 of the New Testament, and he just seemed to have a relentless desire to plant churches and to see the gospel move forward. And so, like I said, Romans 1 just sort of gives us a little insight into what makes him so confident and what sort of keeps him moving forward in the midst of what were really some unbelievable hardships that he endured. And so my first point was simply out of kind of what drove Paul was that Paul operates out of a strong sense of identity. So we spent a little bit of time talking about identity and where our identity comes from. Point number 2 was that Paul is encouraged by the church community. Paul didn't see himself as just someone that was high and mighty and above everyone, but he was blessed by the church community, and they encouraged his faith as much as he encouraged theirs. Number 3, Paul clearly understands his purpose. It's really important to have a strong sense of purpose if you're going to stick with something, and Paul clearly did that. And then finally, Paul was unashamed of his message. And we just talked about how you're more bold in your proclamation of something if you're unashamed of that thing. And so that was certainly the case with Paul and the gospel, all right? The text was Romans 1, 1 through 17. And then here are some questions that you can unpack in your groups together this week. So the first question again, what was most interesting or encouraging to you this week from the sermon? Number 2, what was most challenging or raised more questions for you this week from the sermon? Question number 3, again, Paul operated out of a strong sense of identity. And so what labels are you most known for? Or another way to ask that might be, what labels most define your life? And then why? And again, you can feel free to unpack that as much as you want. Maybe there are some labels that you don't like or that you would like to disregard, or maybe some people have the wrong idea or they give you wrong and false labels. And so you can take as much time as you like as a group to kind of talk about that idea of identity and what we're known for. Question number 4. So Paul is encouraged by the church community. So take some time and talk about, what ways are you or have you been encouraged by your church community? How has your church community encouraged your faith? Question number 5. Paul clearly understands his purpose. So what would you say is your purpose or calling? And how is your purpose clarified or affirmed by other people? All right. And then finally, Paul is unashamed of his message. So how could you become more bold in living and sharing the gospel with the people that God places around you? All right. Take some time and just discuss some ways in which you, or maybe as a group, we could be more bold as we live and share the gospel. All right. Action step kind of goes along with one of those questions, but it was to write down some ways in which you are blessed or encouraged by your faith community this week. And then take some time and really thank God for the people in your life that encourage your faith. All right? That's all I got. I hope y'all have a great week, a great discussion in your groups, and we will see you next Sunday.